Yeah, boy, what up, everybody? Let me get this set. Yeah, we back in the building. Had to hit the subject. Let me get the camera set. Hoping everyone having a good day on this blessed day, on this blessed Mother's Day. Kinfolk, what if they're, keeping it real and real for you? Yep. All back in the building. Alcoholics mixtape, son. Yeah, boy, we back. Let me zip this up for the lumberjacks. Now, there's been some talk to say black people don't have our own culture, which we do have our own culture, and not against people that have their opinions about that. But I have to say that I disagree with that. African American culture is a Black American culture. Hold on, make sure y'all can see it. All right, here we go. The African American culture is known as Black American culture or Black culture in American English refers to the cultural expressions of African Americans either as part of the distinct from mainstream American culture. African American culture has been influential on America and global worldwide culture as a whole. African Americans have faced systematic and violent racism through periods of enslavement, discriminatory Jim Crow laws, segregation, as well as through the civil rights movement. This racism has led to African Americans being excluded from many aspects of American life and experiences and proudly influenced African American culture. Moreover, in the face of these significant challenges, other experiences of racial discrimination, African Americans have produced distant traditions and radical invitations in music, art, literature, religion, cuisine, and other fields. These cultural expressions in fields such as these often serve as powerful apparatus for advancing racial justice, which shapes African American, African American cultural history from the earliest days of American slavery in the 17th century. Slave owners sought to exercise control over their slaves by attempting to strip them of their African culture. In the New World in general, and in the United States in particular, physical isolation and socialization, marginalization of African slaves, often physical isolation, social tool, marginalization, and their free progeny. Felicity, retention is significant elements of traditional culture among African slave owners. Liability, just, just right quick. Make sure y'all still. African slaves rebelling, traditional culture for African slave owners deliberately tried to repress independent political or cultural organizations and American deals with many slave rebellions. Resistance took the United States, Brazil, Haiti, and Dutch Guianas. African culture, slavery, slave rebellions, and civil rights movement have all shaped African American religious, feminine, political, and economic behaviors in print. Africa is evident in a myriad of ways in political, politics, economics, language, music, hairstyles, fashion, dance, religion, cuisine, and worldwide view. Throughout all of this, African Americans have created their own cultural and unique history in the United States, and in turn, African American culture has had persuasive and transformative impact on many elements of mainstream American culture. The process of mutual create and change, it creativity and exchange is called creolization. Over time, the cultures of African American slaves, and their descendants, has been ubiquitous in the impact of not only the dominant American culture but on world culture as well. Harlem Renaissance, the first major public recognition of African American culture, occurred during the Harlem Renaissance, pioneered by Eileen Locke in the 1920s and 1930s. African American music, literature, and art gained wide notice. Artists such as Neely Hurston and Nellie Larson, and poets such as Langston Hughes, Claude McKay, and County Cullen wrote works describing the African American experience. Jazz, swing, blues, and other musical forms entered American popular music. African American artists such as William H. Johnson, Aaron Douglas, and Palmer Hayden created unique works of featuring arts featuring African Americans. The Harlem Renaissance was also a time increased by political involvement. African Americans among the notable African American political movements founded in the early 20th century are Universal Negro Improvement Association, International Associate of Advance of Colored People, the Nation of Islam, notable Qazik Islamic religious movement, also began in the 1930s, based in the ACP also. The ACP also. Let me edit this right quick. There we go. But yes, the music. Main article. In American music, see also black gospel music, rock and roll, hip hop, Christian hip hop, jazz music, R&B, and rock and roll. African American music is rooted in typically polyrhythmic music and of the ethnic groups of Americans, specifically those in the Western, Sahelian, and Central South regions. Central and South regions, African oral traditions, nutrient slavery encouraged the use of music to pass on history, teach lessons, ease suffering, and relay messages. The African pedigree of African American music and is evident in some common elements: call and response, syncopation, percussion, improvisation, swung notes, blue notes, and the use of falsetto, melisma, and complex multi-part harmony. During slavery, Africans and Americans blended traditional European hymns with African elements to create spirituals. The banjo was the first African derived instrument to be played and built in the United States. Slaveholders discovered African American slaves to use drums to communicate. as far back as the 1700s, after drums were outlawed after the Stono Rebellion in South Carolina, African Americans created hambone, patting their bodies in order to make their music. Many African Americans sing, lift every voice, and sing in addition to the American national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner, or in lieu of it, written by James Weldon Johnson and John Russellman Johnson in 1900 to be performed for the birthday of Abraham Lincoln. The song was and continues to be a popular way for African Americans to recall past struggles and express ethics, solidarity, faith, and hope for the future. The song was adopted as the Negro National Anthem by the NAACP in 1919. Many African American children are taught the song at school, church, or by families, lift every voice and sing traditionally. If sung immediately following or instead of the Star Spangled Banner at events hosted by African American churches, schools, and other organizations. In the 19th century, as the result of the blackface minstrel show, African American music entered mainstream American society. By the early 20th century, several musical forms with origins in the African radio phonograph. African radio and phonograph records. Ragtime, jazz, blues, and swing also became popular overseas in the 1920s, but became known as the Jazz Age. The early 20th century also saw the creation of the first African American Broadway shows, films such as King Badger's Hallelujah, Hallelujah, and operas such as George Crenshaw's Porgy and Bess, rock and roll, doo-wop, and R&B, one of my favorite genres, well, all my favorite genres. Developed in the mid 20th century, these genres became very popular in white audiences and were influences for other genres such as surf. During the 1970s, the dozens in urban African American tradition of using rhyming slang to put down one's enemies or friends. And the African American tradition of rapping developed into a new form of music in the South Bronx. Shout out to the South Bronx. The half speaking, half singing, rhythmic street talk of rapping grew into the hugely successful cultural force known as hip hop. Hip hop and contemporary R&B would become a multicultural movement. However, it still remained important to many African Americans. The African American culture movement of the 1960s and 1970s also fueled the growth of funk and later hip hop forms such as rap, hip, house, New Jack Swing, one of my favorite genres. Shout out to Teddy Riley and all the vendors of New Jack Swing, and go-go house music. Ain't my kind hype, baby. Shout out to Full Force. Of course, you got to realize MC Hammer, got to realize Kid and Play and all them with the go-go swing and New Jack. And it was created in black communities in Chicago. Shout out to CHIGAGO. As Cruz Conflict can do what I would say. Final ticket. Here we go. Get up out them other styles conflict. Call this rodeo. In the 1980s, African American music has experienced far more widespread acceptance in American popular music in the 21st century than ever before. In addition of continuing to develop newer musical forms, modern artists have also stated a rebirth of the older genres in the form of genres such as neo soul, love neo soul, Jill Scott, NDRE, check them out. Of course, my man, not Tyrese, D'Angelo, Music Soul Child, another one. Hold on. Neo soul and modern funk inspired groups. Famous contemporary African American musicians include 50 Cent, yeah, many man. Of course, you know that 50. Jay-Z, it's The Rock, Alicia Keys, Usher, Mary J. Blige, Neo, Snoop Dogg, and Kanye West. Kanye West got a lot of samples. Of course, Snoop, one of the head honchos of the G-Funk era. Neo got the Neo Soul. I just call him that Neo, and I guess that's where he got his musical name, Neo from Neo Soul. Of course, Mary J. Blige, Usher, Usher got that soul, at least keys to bring more of that piano style to the modern R&B. Jay-Z got that, like, I don't know, good storytelling and samples. 50 Cent just got that kind of southern twang, but even though he's from New York, basically East Coast with a southern twang. What I'm trying to say, that art's a dance African American dance, like other aspects of American culture, finds the earliest roots in the dances of the hundreds of African ethnic groups that made up the enslaved African population in the Americas, as well as in traditional folk dances from Europe. Dance in the African tradition, and thus in the tradition of slaves, was a part of both everyday life and special occasions. Many of these traditions, such as get down, ring shouts, icon line dancing, and other elements of African body language, survive as elements of modern dance. In the 19th century, African American dance began to appear in minstrel shows. These shows often present African Americans as caricatures for ridicule to a large audience. The first African American dance to become popular with white dancers was the cakewalk in 1891. Later, dances to follow in this tradition includes the Charleston, the Lindy Hop, the Jitterbug, and the Swing. During the Harlem Renaissance, African American Broadway shows such as Suffer Along helped to establish the legitimized African American dancers. African American dance forms, such as tap, a combination of African and European influences, gained widespread popularity thanks to dancers such as Bill Robson. Tip my hat off, recipe to late Bill Robson, one of the forefathers of what we do in his music/slash entertainment world, and were used by leading right choreographers who often hired African American dancers. And shout out to Big L, one of like would have been like the of my timeline in the '90s modern day dancers. I don't know Big Ledge. I meant to say Big Leslie. That's her name. You seen her on '90s babies and '80s babies seen her on like Def Comedy Jam. I don't know about Comic View, but she was in. So she was choreographer on different ones. I'm gonna have to make a video on so y'all know who she is. Contemporary African American dance and descended from these earlier forms and also draws the influence from African and Caribbean dance forms. Groups such as the Alvin Alley American Dance Theater have continued to contribute to the growth of this form. Modern popular dance in America is also greatly influenced by African American dance. American popular dance also has also drawn many influences from African American dance, most notably in the hip hop genre, my genre, because I am hip hop 2009 underground. One of the uniquely African dance and descendants from these early forms, and also draws influence from African and Caribbean dance forms. Groups such as the Alvin Alley American Dance Theater have continued to contribute to the growth of this form. Modern popular dance in America is also greatly influenced by African American dance. American popular dance has also drawn many influences from African American dance, most notably in the hip hop genre. One of the uniquely African American forms of dancing, turfing, emerged from social and political movements in the East Bay in the San Francisco area. Shout out to E40, shout out to Too Short, shout out to MC8, and shout out to anyone there, JT the Bigger Figure from in the Bay. San Francisco Bay Area, turfing is a hood dance in response to the loss of African American lives. Tip my hat off to that dance, so I know what it means now. Police brutality and race relations in Oakland, California. The dance is an expression of blackness and one of the integrates concepts of solidarity, social support, peace, and the discourse of the state of black people in our current social structures. Twerking is an African American dance similar to dance from Africa in Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Somalia, and the Congo. From its early origins in slave communities through the end of the 20th century, African Americans art has made a vital contribution to the art of the United States. During this period between the 17th century and the early 19th century, art took the form of small drums, quilts, wrought iron figures, and ceramic vessels in the southern United States. These artifacts have similarities to with comparable crafts in West and Central Africa. In contrast, African Americans, artisans like the New England based engraver Scipio Moorhead and the Baltimore portrait painters Josh Seward Johnson created the art that was conceived entirely Western European fashion. During the 19th century, Harriet Powers made quills in rural Georgia, United States that are now considered amongst the finest examples of 19th century Southern quilting. Later in the 20th century, the woman of Jews being developed a distinctive, bold, and sophisticated quilting style based on traditional African American quilts with a geometry simplicity that developed separately but was like that of Amish quilts in modern arts. After the American Civil War, museums and galleries began more frequently in displaying the work of African American artists. Cultural expression and mainstream being used was still limited by the dominant European aesthetic and by racial prejudice and to increase the visibility of their work. Many African American artists traveled to Europe where they had greater freedom. It was not until the Harlem Renaissance that more European Americans began to pay attention to African American art in America. During the 1920s, artists such as Rigmond Bertie, Aaron Douglas, Augusta Savage, and photographer James Van Der Zee became well known for their work during the Great Depression. New opportunities arose for these and other African American artists under the WPA in later years. Other programs and institutions such as the New York City based Harman Foundation helped to foster African American artistic talent. Augusta Savage, Elizabeth Catlett, Louis Mallow Jones, Ramir Burden, Jacob Lawrence, and others exhibited in museums and juried art shows and built reputations and followings for themselves. In the 1950s and 1960s, there were very few widely accepted African American artists. Despite this, the Highwaymen, a loose association of the 27 African American artists from St. Pete, Florida, created idyllic, quickly realized images of the Florida landscape and peddled some 50,000 of them from the trunks of their cars. They sold their art directly to the public rather than through galleries and art agents, thus receiving the name the Highwayman, rediscovered in the mid 1990s, my era. Yeah, yeah. Today, they are recognized as an important part of American folk history. The artwork is widely collected by enthusiasts, and original pieces can easily fetch thousands of dollars in auctions and sales. The Black arts movement of the 1960s and 1970s was another period of resurgent interest in African American art. During this period, several of African American artists gained national prominence, among them Lou Stavoli, Ed Love, Charles White, and Jeff Danielson. Danielson and a group of African American artists formed an Afrocentric collective, my era, Mr. Afrocentric himself. I like this. Collective Afro Cobra, which remains in existence today. Yeah, yeah, you better recognize that Afrocentric ain't going nowhere. Like Crazy Bone said in 2002, 2001, 3, third world. I ain't gonna say we're back because we never left this mofo alone. It exists today. The sculpture of Martin Perver, whose work has been acclaimed for years, has been honored with a 30-year retrospective of his work at the Museum of Modern Art in New York in November 2007. See, I was 6 years old when that happened. Notable contemporary African American artists including Willie Cole, David Harmons, Eugene J. Martin, Mose Tolliver, Randall Ruffins, and the late William. Take my hat off them. Shout out to the late William Tolliver, the late William Tolliver, and Kara Walker. Ceramics in Charleston, South Carolina, 13 colonial ware from the 18th century was found with folded strips, roulette decorations from the time of colonial America until the 19th century in the United States. African Americans there and their enslaved African ancestors, as well as Native Americans who were enslaved and not enslaved, were creating culinary work in this pottery style. Relati decorated pottery likely originated in West Africa and is another region of Central Africa amid 2000 BCE and long-standing pottery traditions from which of the Charleston Cullen word derives likely began its international development between 1800 BCE and 400. No, let me phrase that. Between 800 BCE and 400 BCE. In Mali, thereafter, the pottery traditions expanded around 900 CE into the Lake Chad Basin, into the southwestern region of Mariatia, I think. I'll say Mariatia, and by 1200 CE and by the 19th century or 19th century CE, expanded southward. More specifically, the pottery style for the Charleston colonial may have been created by 18th century peoples, e.g., Canary people, Hazawa people in Kano, and the Kanium Bonur Empire, with broader context, following the 17th century enslavement of Western Africans. For the farming of rice in South Carolina, the Charleston colony where may be understood as Afrocism from West/Central Africa, which endured the Middle Passage and became transplanted into the local culture of colonial era Low Country, South Carolina. Symbolisms for Africa may have served. Let's see. Enslavement West Africa's forming rights in South Carolina. Charles Cullen Webb understood as Africanism from West South Central Africa was endured in Middle Passage and became transplanted into the local cultural and colonial era, Low Country, South Carolina. Symbolisms for Africa may have served identity. Symbols are identity markers for enslaved African Americans, creators of stoneware. For example, David Drake signature marks, e.g., an X, a slash, as well as Landrum crosses, which were developed by enslaved African Americans and appear similar to Congo cosmograms. As such examples for Edgefield County, South Carolina, literature. Oh, main article, African American literature. Oh, here we go. African American literature has its roots in oral traditions in African slaves in America. The slaves used stories and fables in much the same way as they used music. These stories influenced the earliest African American writers and poets in 18th century, such as Phyllis Whitley and Alada Equano. These authors reached early high points by telling slave narratives. During the early 20th century Harlem Renaissance, numerous authors and poets such as Langston Hughes, one of my heroes, W. Du Bois, another one of my heroes, of course, Booker T. Washington, one of my other heroes, not to mistake for Booker T, the five-time WCW wrestler. But I think Booker T was the wrestler was named after him. Grappled with how to respond to discrimination in America. Authors during the civil rights movement, such as Richard Wright, James Baldwin, I like Richard Wright and James Baldwin. I like Grinnell Brooks too. And Grinnell Brooks wrote about issues of racial segregation, oppression, and other aspects of African American life. The tradition continues today with authors who have been accepted as an integral part of American literature with works such as Roots, The Saga of American Family, a great series by Alex Haley, The Color Purple by Alice Walker Beloved, another great series, and by Nobel Peace Prize winning Toni Morrison. In fiction works as by Octavia Butler and Walter Mosley, such works she's both best-selling and or award-winning status. Oh yeah, here we go. Another one of my favorite subjects, cinema. African American films typically feature an African American cast and are targeted at African American artists. More recently, Black films feature multicultural casts and are aimed at multicultural audience, even if American blackness is essential to the storyline. Games, card games, are traditionally enjoyed by African Americans at familiar gatherings. That's true, especially cookouts and stuff, maybe in funerals. Gatherings originating black card games, including bid whist, spades, tonk, like tonk, pity pack, and roomy, like room. Spades, all right. I don't know what bid whist is. I'm trying to think of that. Talking, the board is not allowed in any game. Hand games that trickled from Africa are also permitted in Black American culture. Double this, double that. Mama, mama, can't you see? Slide, baby. Miss Mary Mac. I like Miss Mary Mac. That's my she's niece. You know what it is. I think I remember that since the 90s. Down, down, baby. And not to be mistaken for Nelly's song from Country Grammar. No, see, shimmy, shimmy, cocoa puff, rockin' Robin, tweet. Remember that song? Rockin' Robin, tweet, tweet. Down by the banks of Hanky Panky. That sounds familiar. I gotta check that out. And shame, shame, shame. I remember we used to say that in the 90s too. But I think they went back since the Little Rascal era, people saying that. And a handful of kinesthetic games enjoyed by predominantly young black girls. Double Dutch, I like some Double Dutch, and hopscotch are other games like hopscotch too. That's the business. I think I got so agile, like, you know. And other staple games which are similar to footwork games played amongst children in African roller skating, an activity that gained popularity during the 1960s. Let me go see is anyone in the comments. Make sure anyone in the comments that's comment on left out. All right. Check the other channels. All right, we back. We back. Museum. The African American Museum movement emerged during the 1950s and 1960s to preserve the heritage of African American experience to ensure its proper interpretation in American history. Museums devoted to African American history are found in many African American neighborhoods and tuitions such as the African American Museum and Library of Oakland, the African American Museum in Cleveland, and the Natchez Museum of African American History and Culture were created by African Americans to teach and investigate cultural history that until recent decades was primarily preserved through oral traditions. Other prominent African American museums included Chicago's DeSilva Museum of African American History and the National Museum of African American History and Culture, established in 2003 as a part of the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. And that's the video, kinfolk. Hope you like this video. Share it, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell. And we out.